All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something I think a lot of us could use a refresher on, especially if you're like me and you spend a lot of time at a desk. Ergonomics and biomechanics.
Yeah, really fascinating stuff. And you sent over some really cool material on this, how basically understanding how your body moves and works and then setting up your workspace and just your life in general to work with that can really prevent a lot of injuries and just make you feel a lot better overall.
Exactly. So much good stuff in here. We've got an IMSs course, which is kind of like a deep dive into what ergonomics is all about, how it can help you avoid these things called MSDs, musculoskeletal disorders. We'll get into that more. And also looking at biomechanics, like literally how forces, like physical forces, impact our bodies. So we're going to kind of bring all that together.
Yeah, connect the dots. And really, I think the goal here is to give people a solid understanding of, how these ideas can really have an impact on your health and your work life without getting too bogged down in all the technical jargon.
For sure, for sure. So let's jump right in. First things first, what exactly are we talking about when we say ergonomics?
So ergonomics, it actually comes from these Greek words meaning like work and laws. But basically, it's all about designing, your workspaces, the tasks you do, even the tools you use, so that they actually fit the worker. It's not about forcing your body to adapt to a poorly designed job.
Right, right. Make the job fit you, not the other way around. Okay, so that's ergonomics. And the big problem here that your source highlights is that if we ignore this stuff, we can end up with these MSDs. What exactly are those and how do they actually affect people?
Yeah, so MSDs, musculoskeletal disorders, these can affect all the moving parts of your body, right?
Yeah.
Your muscles, your tendons, ligaments, joints, even cartilage. And they can happen pretty much anywhere, like hands and wrists are really common, but also your neck, your shoulders, legs, anywhere you're putting strain or repetitive motion.
So, and the source here points out a lot of different reasons why those things pop up, like repetitive motions, bad posture, if you're sitting or standing the wrong way. Even things like really quick movements, a lot of vibration, or extreme temperatures like really hot or really cold.
Exactly. And it can be serious. It can lead to, a lot of pain and difficulty moving. Even things like, just everyday tasks becoming really difficult.
Wow. Yeah. And I noticed in the material, it mentions some jobs that are particularly at risk here.
Yeah, definitely. Things like, driving for long periods of time, construction workers, obviously, a lot of physical strain, cleaning staff, and any job that involves a lot of manual handling of objects.
Right, right. So it's not just people in offices. It's really a wide range of jobs where this can be an issue. But the good news is that the material also has some really specific advice on how to improve things, right? What can people actually do to make their workspaces and their bodies happier?
Oh, absolutely. There's tons of practical tips in here, even just adjusting the height of your desk so that you're not hunched over, making sure you have a comfortable chair that supports your back properly, and then thinking about the tools you use. Are they easy to reach? Are they the right size and weight for you?
Makes sense.
Yeah. And if you're lifting anything, really paying attention to how much it weighs, keeping those loads close to your body, using proper lifting techniques, and then even just keeping your workspace clean and organized can make a big difference.
Okay, so keeping things tidy, good posture, the right tools.
Right. And then there's even more specific stuff like making sure your hand tools have comfortable handles, trying to use tools and equipment that have low vibration, taking breaks, wearing a headset instead of cradling the phone between your ear and your shoulder. And importantly, getting proper training on how to use equipment safely and correctly.
It's amazing how often those things get overlooked, right? Just a little bit of training can go a long way. And it's not just about, avoiding pain either. There are real benefits to all of this, right?
Oh, absolutely. Your source really emphasizes that good ergonomics can actually lead to higher productivity. You're more comfortable, so you can work more efficiently. And that can lead to, better quality work overall. You can work longer without getting as tired or as sore, less likely to get injured. And that, of course, means lower costs for businesses because they're not dealing with as many workers' comp claims or healthcare expenses and, happier employees all around.
Yeah, it's a win-win. Okay, so now before we move on, your material also mentions this term, the role you evilus. I have to admit I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, so RULD stands for work-related neck and upper limb disorders. Basically, it's a kind of catch-all term for all sorts of conditions that affect your hands, wrists, fingers, also your neck, shoulders, even your legs. And it can start as something really minor, like just some numbness or a little bit of discomfort. But if it's not addressed, it can progress to some pretty serious pain and even like limit your ability to move properly. In some cases, it can even lead to surgery or long-term disability. So definitely something to be aware of.
Wow, okay, that's a good one to know. So we've talked about ergonomics, how that plays out in the workplace. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about biomechanics. How does that fit into all of this?
So biomechanics, it's the study of how our bodies actually move. How all the different parts work together. Muscles, bones, tendons, ligaments. Like, think of it as applying the principles of mechanics to living organisms. It's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, and what I found really fascinating in the material you shared is this idea that like the loads and stresses that we put on our bodies actually affect our tissues. Like our bodies are constantly adapting to what we do.
Exactly, exactly. Like if you have high blood pressure, it affects the walls of your arteries. Or like, heart muscle, it actually behaves differently after a heart attack. And we all know, like, if you exercise, your bones get stronger. Even plants adapt to the wind. So our bodies are always remodeling themselves based on, what we're doing, the forces that are acting on them.
That's wild. So it's not just like, a fixed system, it's constantly changing and adapting. And this isn't exactly a new field of study, is it?
No, not at all. The study of biomechanics, it goes all the way back like to Aristotle. He was already thinking about living things as mechanical systems. And then you have Leonardo da Vinci. He studied animal anatomy to understand how muscles and joints worked. He even tried to build like flying machines based on birds.
No way. Wow, that's amazing. And were there others who kind of picked up that torch?
Oh yeah, definitely. Galileo and Descartes, they also contributed. And there's this guy, Giovanni Borelli, he did all these really detailed studies of how animals move. He even figured out where the human center of gravity is.
Yeah.
And then later on, like in the 19th century, when they invented motion capture, that really like kicked things up a notch.
Wow. So it's a field with a pretty long and interesting history. So aside from just like understanding how we move, how is biomechanics actually used today? Like, are there practical applications for this stuff?
Oh, tons. It's super important for things like designing prosthetics, so artificial limbs or orthotics, like braces and supports, even things like dental implants. And understanding joint friction, that's a big one for designing successful bone replacements. So it's really making a difference in people's lives.
That's incredible. Now, back to injuries for a second. Your material explains that injuries can actually happen because of abnormal biomechanics, right? Like your body's not reacting to forces in the way that it should be. So what are some of the reasons for that?
Yeah, so that can happen for a bunch of reasons. Muscle imbalances are a big one. Like if some muscles are too strong and others are too weak, or some are too tight and others are too loose, it can throw things off. And then poor technique, like if you're lifting weights or running with bad form, it can put extra stress on your joints. Bad posture, of course. And even using the wrong equipment, like, running shoes that don't provide the right support. And what's interesting is that even small, like physical variations between people can alter their biomechanics and increase their risk of injury.
Wow, it's amazing how much goes into it. So really, we've been talking about two sides of the same coin, right? Like ergonomics is kind of the practical application of all this biomechanics knowledge, right?
Exactly. Like by understanding how our bodies are meant to move, the kinds of forces they're designed to handle, we can create environments, our workspaces, our homes, and also habits, like how we move, how we sit, all that stuff. We can create those things in a way that minimizes harmful stresses and prevents those injuries that we talked about, those MSDs and WRLDs.
So I think what's really powerful here is that, this deep dive shows us how understanding these principles can really empower us to make better choices, right? Like how we interact with the world around us, our posture, our work setup, even just how we move throughout the day. It's all connected to our well-being.
Absolutely. And it's like, this constant back and forth between your body and the environment. Every single movement you make, the position you hold, even the tools you use, it all has a biomechanical effect. So the more aware we are of that, the better we can protect ourselves from injury and just feel better overall.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a really eye-opening deep dive. So much great information in the material you sent over. And it brings up a really important question that I want to leave you with today. Think about your daily routine, your workspace. What's one small change that you can make right now based on all these ergonomic and biomechanical ideas that can really help you invest in your long-term physical well-being? It's worth giving it some serious thought. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Thanks for having me. It was great chatting with you.
Always a pleasure.